once again to Let's Start Cooking. I'm Wayne, and today, before we even get started with the recipe, I would like to take this time to show my great appreciation to everyone who has subscribed to this channel, because we hit our next marker, which is 500 subscribers, on our way to 1,000 and hopefully more. So I again want to thank everybody that subscribed to the channel. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you'll share it with your friends. So what we're going to do today is we're going to make Italian wedding soup. So it's a really easy soup, it really is. So all we're going to do is we're going to start with the meat first, and what we want to do is we're going to use ground beef and we're going to use ground pork. And I have about 1/2 pound of each of these. So what we want to do with this is we're going to combine this in a bowl. It's really simple. And we want to take 2 slices of bread, just normal white bread, and 1/4 cup of milk. And we're going to let this bread soak in this milk while we're getting everything else ready. We just want this bread to soak up all that milk. And we're doing this instead of breadcrumbs. And this is going to help hold everything together. So we're going to let that sit and we're going to let that soak up. So what we're going to do, we're going to take our combined meat, and all we're going to do is we're going to add our salt, our pepper, our parsley, our garlic powder, our onion powder. We're going to add 1 large egg, and we're going to add 1/2 cup of grated Parmesan cheese. Now, if you don't want to grate this yourself, there's many brands out there that are strictly just Parmesan cheese. There's no fillers, no cellulose, you can find it. And we're just going to add 1/2 cup of that right in. And we're going to add our bread that we had soaking, and we're going to add that right in. Now we want to mix this up. We want to mix this up pretty good, but we don't want to overwork this mixture, because the more you work this, it's going to start to get tough on you, and we don't want that to happen. But we do want to make sure that everything gets combined fairly well. And I just kind of flip it over as I go. I don't want to squeeze and maneuver it too much. We just don't want spots of bread or spots of pepper. And once we get this mixed up, now with Italian wedding soup, we don't want large meatballs. These meatballs are only supposed to be about 1/2 inch in diameter. They're small meatballs, because what we do, we actually put these meatballs in the soup as they cook. We don't put these in the oven, we don't cook them first. These actually go right in with the soup, so if you made them too big, they wouldn't cook through by the time the soup was done. This is the type of soup that doesn't take all day to make. This soup's only going to take about 1 hour to 2 hours to complete. So once we get this mixed up now, we're going to take a small scoop, and I'm using just a regular melon ball scooper, because that's about all the bigger we want. If you don't have that, you can use a teaspoon or a tablespoon, 1 tablespoon, 2 of these. It all depends on what you want, but don't make them too big. So we're just going to take a tray. Now I just took a normal tray, and I laid some parchment paper on it so it doesn't stick. And I'm just going to take this, and I'm just going to take it like that, and I'm just going to roll them up. And that's about all the bigger you want. You don't want to go real big with these. And we're just going to lay them out on a tray. Now, obviously I have a lot to do, so we're going to get all these rolled up. We're going to put them on our tray. We're going to set them aside, and then we'll continue on with our soup. Now that we have all the meatballs that we rolled together, we put them on a piece of parchment paper. All we're going to do is we're going to set these aside, and we're going to work on our vegetables and actually starting our soup. So we just put these to the side, and we're going to take about 1/3 cup. Now we're using the white onion, and what you're going to want to do with this, you want to chop this pretty fine. I mean, you don't want to mince this, so don't go too fine with it. But all we want to do is we're just going to come across, and we're just going to go like this. Instead of 1, we're gonna give it 2. And then that way when we come down through, we're gonna get our nice pieces. When you finely chop something, you want the pieces about the size of a corn kernel. That's about all the bigger you want to go. Just so they're nice and chopped. We don't have to worry about the ends. But we don't want, if you get really big pieces, you can break them up and make sure you want something like that. But that's all we want. When I say finely chopped, you don't want really, really big pieces. We're going to do the same thing with our celery. And do the same thing with carrots. Again, we're using about 2 stalks of celery. We're going to use about 2 carrots. Go about 6 to 8 minutes. Once we cook these for about 8 minutes, we want them nice and translucent. We want to soften up. What we're going to do now is we're going to add 12 cups of chicken broth right to our stock pot. And that's why I said this is why you need a pretty big pot. And that's why I say also make sure you have a big enough pot, because you're going to this, we still have to add meatballs. So we want to make sure that we have enough room. So now what we want to do with this, we're going to bring this back up to a boil before we add anything else. So we're going to let this boil now. And once it starts to boil, then we can add the rest of our ingredients. Okay. Our soup has come up to a boil. So what we want to do now is now we're going to add the meatballs back in. We're going to add escarole, which is from the endive family. And if you can't find it, you can always substitute spinach. It wasn't that hard for me. I got it at my local store, so I'm sure you guys can. And we're going to use a pasta called acini di pepe, which is Italian. It's seeds of pepper. It's really small, but it's got a really good flavor. And you can get it. It's not hard to find, as you can see. I got it at the regular store. It wasn't like I had to go to a specialty store. But if you can see, it's real tiny pasta. So all we're going to do now is we're just going to add that right into our soup. Going to mix that up just a little bit so it doesn't hit the bottom. We're going to add our escarole. And again, this is why I also say to be careful with your pot and make sure you have a big enough pot. So we used a whole head. If you can't fit it all in, what I would do is I put so much in, and then I'm going to put my meatballs in just to make sure that we have enough room. Because the last thing I want to do is put everything in and not have the room for the meatballs. Now with these, I'm going to take these I'm just gonna add these in little by little because again, I don't want to just drop all these in at one shot. And that's why we make these small, because these are gonna cook within this soup. And we don't want for the meatballs to be raw or undercooked. Because we're gonna let this boil now for, again, about 6 minutes, 7 minutes. We just wanna make sure that the meatballs get cooked all the way through. So we're just gonna add these in all the way around, and we'll give it a quick stir, gentle, so we don't break these up. But we wanted to make sure that we had enough room in our pot, because the last thing we want to do, like I said, is get halfway through and realize we don't have enough room. So we'll just drop these in all the way around. And as you can see, it really wasn't that hard of a recipe. It's a little time consuming. I remember when I was a kid, I would go over to my grandmother's house and I knew what she was making because I would ask her if I could help, and the first thing she would do is hand me the ground meat and say, here, make some meatballs. And I'd sit and I'd roll and I'd roll. We'll give this just a little stir, gentle. Because like I said, we don't want to tear these up. Just to get them mixed up so they're not sticking to the bottom when we put them in. And since we have the room, we'll add a little bit more escarole. And like I said, I used a whole head. Get this all nice and mixed up. Now what we're gonna do, like I said, we're gonna let this cook now. We're gonna cover this and boil this for about another 6 to 7 minutes. We wanna make sure the meatballs are nice and cooked all the way through. So we'll cover this back up. And we're gonna see you in about 8 minutes. All right, now we've had this going for us, about 8 minutes it took. But all we wanna do now, gently take that lid off. We're gonna turn this down to medium. Because what we want to do, we want to give it a quick stir, and we did stir this throughout the time because remember, you do have pasta in here and you don't want it to stick to the bottom until this starts to boil for you. You want to check one of your meatballs, make sure they're done all the way through. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take one large egg, and we're going to take 2 tablespoons of grated Parmesan cheese. And we're going to just mix that together. Because what we want to do is we're going to gently put this into our soup as we're stirring it. Because we want to get nice strands as we dump this in here. So we just want to mix this up. And what we want to do is we're going to turn this and we're going to slowly get this to go nice and round for us. And we're just going to gently as we can anyway, you just want to put this in. Because all we want to do is we don't want this to clump up. But you see how it's getting that nice little strands on the top? That's what we want to do. Like I said, it's a little time consuming doing this, but the soup tastes so good. And as you can see, you're going to have more than enough. We're going to let this cook just a little bit longer to make sure the egg cooks through. And we can leave the lid off now. Now that we have that mixed up, we're just going to let that cook through just a little bit. just so we keep the heat in. I don't think it took us 45 minutes, and that's with us filming. Now with the wait time of the soup cooking, obviously it takes about an hour, depending on how fast you're at chopping and everything else, but about an hour to an hour and a half. But you can feed your family for 2 days off of this, or even if you have somebody coming over, a large crowd. So now what we want to do is we're going to take this now, and it smells so good. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a ladle. I'm just going to go down in here. Try to get some meatballs for us. And like I said, the pasta is so tiny. We'll leave that down. And now what you can do with this also, I'll move this to the side so we can get this a little bit more in center for everybody. What I like to do is I like to take a little bit of Parmesan cheese, and we're just going to sprinkle it on the top as a garnish. And that's Italian wedding soup. So let's see if I can do this without burning my mouth. The meatballs are cooked straight through. They're real nice and tender. They got a really good taste because we made them before, and because we cooked them in the soup, it absorbed that flavor as well. The Parmesan comes out really nice. It's really well balanced. It's a nice hearty soup. It's easy to make. I hope you enjoyed this recipe. I hope you'll like and share this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And again, I'd like to thank everybody that has subscribed for us hitting 500 subscribers. And I will see you next week.